So when we learn to communicate with people better, we have a better way of communicating with them. That can be your other half, your loved ones, family, friends. It's not just about business. It's about all relationships that you need communication. The current divorce rate in Australia is something like 58%. So over half of the marriages in Australia fail. I would put majority of that down to communication or lack thereof. Poor communication, miscommunication, just not communicating. Nearly every conflict can be solved if there's better communication, open communication. So this is why we obviously focus on communication and being able to learn and appreciate how other people tick. So you'll have to forgive the creepy pictures in the next section. I have not changed them from the original, but we're going to talk about rapport. So the desired outcome of rapport is to be able to establish rapport with any person at any moment in time. Now, the theory is that communication is only 7% words. So what you say is literally only worth 7% of the communication. 38% is tonality and 55% is physiology. So this is why we spend the time learning about how to read the physiology, because 55% of what we're understanding from another person is what we're seeing, not what we're hearing. 38% plus 7% is what we're hearing, but the big chunk of it is what we're seeing. So when people are like each other, they like each other. Rapport is a process of responsiveness, not necessarily liking, so to speak. But rapport is established by matching and mirroring. So matching and mirroring can mean the gestures. If someone is talking a lot, just stop sharing for just a moment. If someone is talking a lot with their hands, and I know a lot of European cultures are really big about talking with their hands, to the point you can say if you tied their hands behind their back, they wouldn't be able to speak. Matching and mirroring means being able to do that yourself. So that way, the person you're communicating with feels that they really are understood by you. Now, if you're not naturally the type of person that uses their hands, you would do it gently rather than so over the top, keeping it outside of that person's conscious awareness. If someone was, arms crossed in front of you, for you to match and mirror them, you could potentially cross your legs. So you're not back at them with what looks like a little bit of a defensive stance. But in order to stay in rapport, if you were seated, you could cross your legs instead. So you've still got something crossed, which means you're mirroring. Now, matching means if I put up this hand, you would literally, you would put up the same hand. So I've got my right hand up, you'd put your right hand up. So to me, it would look like this. If you were mirroring me, you'd be my mirror. Okay. So that's just for the terminology side of things. It's not necessarily important, but when it says matching and mirroring, matching means if my right hand goes up, your right hand would go up. Mirroring means my right to your left. So that way we look like a mirror. All right. Now, the way we would do that in the physiology is by more exactly what I said before, crossing arms or using gestures. Or if you're talking with someone who's a little bit, I understand, and they've got their hand up to their face, I wouldn't go and do that too, because that would look a little bit silly. But you might do a little bit of with a softer hand rather than a big hand, but it's still a hand to the face. So that way you're still matching them to some degree and gaining rapport with a little bit of something that gets you in tune with them. So physiology is the posture, the gesture, the facial expressions, blinking, breathing. Tonality. This is 38%. So 38% is the voice. the tone, the tempo, the timbre, and the volume being loudness. Here is your 80s salesman in his tweed suit. All right, so all of this is in your book. We're up to tonality, so voice. The tone is the pitch. The tempo is the speed. The timbre is the quality. So the raspiness. If someone has a bit of a raspiness to their voice, you could put on a little bit of rasp in your voice to match them. Now, you wouldn't just go full gravel because that would be obvious, but you could have a tiny bit of raspiness in your voice in order to match them. Volume. If you've ever had a conversation with someone who does not have an inside voice, they yell at you all the time, regardless of whether they're inside or outside. In order to match them and be in rapport with them, you would need to alter the volume of your voice to be just that little bit louder than your natural. I wouldn't match them by yelling at them, but just raise the volume of your natural voice just a little bit so they absolutely feel like they're on the same page. As you would also do if you had someone that spoke quiet as a mouse and you're a loudspeaker, drop your tone, drop the volume a little bit so that way they don't feel like you're yelling at them. All right. So we said that only 7% of communication is words. However, words can be predicates, keywords, common expressions and association, and content chunks. So what are predicates? There's an entire page. If you turn over to page 19, there's an entire page of predicates. So I don't need to fully explain them. There's a whole list. But effectively, I've already hinted at these in the past with if someone was more visual, you may understand that from the words they use, see and look and view and appear, and let me show you this. So any words that are to do with the visual. If you're more of an auditory person or you're hearing that person is more auditory, you may hear the words hear and listen and sounds and tune in and be heard, those sort of words. Kinesthetic, you're going to hear me say a lot about feel, touch, grasp, get a grip of, those sort of things, anything to do with touching. So the kinesthetic. And then the unspecified. Now, unspecified doesn't automatically equal AD, so it doesn't automatically equal neurodivergent or anything like that. But unspecified, we have sense and experience, understand, think, learn, process, decide, etc. So there's an entire list there. Again, it's not about rote learning an entire list of things. It's just having an awareness. So that way, if someone is talking to you about seeing the growth in their clinic and seeing more patients and having more associates, seeing more people, you can hear that person is very much a visual style of person. All right, the other thing it says on page 16, and this one can be very obvious within your own regions and things like that, is keywords. British folk would have quite different keywords to Aussie folk. All right, we just have different lingo, different ways. I had to figure out what Brill was. No, what's Brill? I even Googled it to find out what the heck Brill is. Short for brilliant, right? I don't know. Thought it was a thing. In Australia, we're very much about awesome and very much about okie dokie and anything that can be shortened, which is why I don't know why I didn't pick up on Brill for brilliant, but, you know, that was a very fancy word, whereas Aussies are very slang. We put a Y or an I or an E or an O on the end of everything. We don't have normal names. You've got to extend them with an I or an E or an O. So keywords is being able to pick up on those words. If you've listened to the audio, Tad talks about this keyword phrase, in and of itself. So he's spoken about that a few times, to go in and of itself. Now, I can only assume that's a very American thing, because in and of itself is not something we would use in Australia. However, he mentions it a couple of times. So for a keyword to be in and of itself, great. He's paid attention to that, and he would work out a way to mold and slot in that keyword somewhere in conversation to make it seem normal. As you get to know me, you'll figure out that my keywords are fucking awesome, preferably with the fucking in it. All right. That's just the way I like to hear things. So much so to the point that I've had timeline therapy putting I am fucking awesome in as a belief. So if you want to communicate with me and sell something, tell me your program's fucking awesome and I will buy it. All right. Because it resonates with me. I don't know what it is about it. I don't need to know what it is about it, but they're my keywords. All right. So once you hear people's language, you can start to pick out these keywords, mentally jot them down, and use them carefully within your communication and watch them light up. When you use your sensory acuity, you'll see their little facial features have a little, she gets me, right? That little change to go, oh my God, I'm actually being understood. So when you're communicating with your patients, with your partner, with your children, trying to keep up with the keywords of children, holy moly, right? Slay, everything's slay. But you use that, they look back at you like, Mom, what? Right? You're on their team when you use their words back with them. So this is all part of rapport. It's literally gaining rapport when you start to use their language back with them. Okay. All right. So how do you know that you're actually in rapport with people? The key indicators of rapport. Firstly, you have an internal feeling. You start to know, oh yeah, I'm actually really in line with this person. We experienced this earlier today when you guys were asking each other the keys to achievable outcomes. You could tell, you knew that they were on board with you. The second thing we might see is the color change. And the third thing is they may say something. That's only optional because they may go, oh, I really get you, or I understand, or something like that. Not everyone says stuff. They may nod with you, they may not. Okay. The other thing is you could be leading them into the next phase. So for instance, okay, as you really want to do this program, let's look at what the next phase is for you. So you're leading them into the next phase of the conversation. We now understand, based on our representational systems, so visual, auditory, kinesthetic, etc., that not only is it about understanding that everyone has at least one of them, if not two, of the representational systems, by using the keywords and by using predicates, we can also understand what system that person is running by. All right. And it tends not to change. People are visual, or they're auditory, or they're kinesthetic. And by utilizing that, you can absolutely gain great rapport.